Let me start off by saying that I did my first GCC way back in 1995. I was the first CEO for LG Electronics in India, and we were having challenges in getting government approvals in starting the business. So, we were given another purpose to, set up an R&D center, which, today we call a GCC in some form. And of course, it turned out to be a very successful endeavor. And if I was to do, what we did in 1995 again, I cannot think of doing anything different. We had all the right ingredients. We had contextually empowered talent that just did magic. There was a sense of purpose. We took a three-dimensional approach to setting up the foundation of the center. Obviously, we were looking for people who had job-related skills, people who were culturally compatible, and people who matched the leadership expectations for the company. Soon after LG, I was with News Corporation and had an interesting opportunity to, save, News Corp being acquired by, Yahoo. This was soon after AOL's acquisition of Time Warner. The writing was clearly on the wall that, media was going to be a technology business in disguise of, whatever Rupert was doing. And of course, one of the companies, NDS, that today, everything Tata Sky, came out of, the work that was done. But again, the same recipe in terms of, people, culture, leadership, empowerment, integration, everything that's going to be, tomorrow. So let me talk about, what are some of the trends and maybe how we can potentially sustain India's competitive advantage. I've got a few points, maybe not in any particular order, but I think all of them are going to be very important given everything that Rajesh and Sindhu have spoken about, where the industry is headed in terms of numbers and what it can do for the sustained social and economic development of our nation. So the first point is, the fact that the final frontier for a GCC is the enterprise. Let's not forget the fact that GCC is integral part of an organization, and you can go as far as the organization would let you go to, right? So whether you are the back office, whether you are the front office, whether you are the better part of the organization, I guess, the big change that we are seeing in the GCCs that are being established today are the fact that they are resembling more of the enterprise than maybe a service delivery kind of a manifestation. Maybe the next turn for a GCC is going to be that it'll morph into an enterprise. We will no longer set up GCCs. We will set up, another office, another location, another center for a company, and they get it right from the beginning. Early days when I started my GCC industry, in some ways we had to go through a 4-step process. You experiment, you optimize, you transform, and you innovate. What we're seeing GCCs do now is they just arrive, right? They just leapfrog. They're learning and sharing from, the ecosystem as Sindhu was alluding to. The GCCs that are coming in, now have the late mover advantage, and they are essentially, picking up the threads from the incumbents, the large number of GCCs that, are here today. So in some ways, all the mistakes have been made. You don't have to go through a journey. And what is really required is to arrive. And I guess our biggest competitive advantage is going to be the scale, the fact that we have had all types of battle scars, and now it's going to be more around how can you learn from the lessons, of the incumbents and be successful, from the very beginning. So there is an opportunity to sort of leapfrog. The next point I want to make is around this whole notion of simplicity. In our endeavors to, be more competitive as, companies providing these services, we tend to, complicate, the concept. And I want to narrate a small story over here. I was talking to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and I call it as the 19th floor paradox. So, he was finding it very difficult to understand the concept of a GCC. And it so happened that this company had, a swanky headquarters in, downtown of one of the large sort of US towns, and they were occupying 18th floor of a, flagship, tower in the city. And they were looking at expanding, and they were looking at going to the 19th floor. And the analogy that worked best for him was this whole notion of think about your GCC becoming the 19th floor. You just hire people, they will be integrated to rest of the 18th floor like, you have today, and they'll come to work, they'll be the company, they'll take pride in, what you do as a business. They would be obsessed by the customers and everything that this company stood for. He got it, and he actually created the 19th floor. And the GCC today is called the 19th floor in their internal sort of parlance. It was a very simplistic execution of the concept. Again, Sindhu spoke about 3 to 4 months that it takes to set up a GCC. They took much less time because everything that worked in their HQ2, they made it work in India. So this whole notion of not overcomplicating, matters and just setting up an office that's going to work is possibly what is going to help us in terms of sustaining our competitive advantage. I guess our biggest competitive advantage is our adaptability and flexibility as a country. I mean, I've gone around the world. We've tried, setting up GCCs in many other locations. And I guess the big difference we have in India is how compatible, how flexible, how adaptable we are as a nation. We join a company, and the next day we are that company. We don their colors, we, sing their anthem, we take pride, and, we go and, carry the flag wherever we go. And I guess that's going to be one of the biggest competitive advantage. And that's going to come with the simplicity of how GCCs are going to be set up. The next point I want to make is around this whole notion of purpose. There's a lot of talk about profit center, value, IP, AI. I guess all that is great, and I think it's India's competitive advantage. We have talent that can do magic. We can do just about anything that anyone else in the world can do. But it's the purpose of the enterprise that enables a GCC that is most important. Last week we did our 175th GCC. We're doing a GCC every 10 days. We're talking to almost about 150 companies. And I can tell you, every company is looking at the GCC standing for a purpose that's aligned to the organization. The burning platforms, the needs, whether it's capacity, whether it's capability, whether it's, providing, some level of service that the mothership is not able to provide. So I guess keeping purpose in the rear view mirror is going to be something very important for us to, sustain this competitive advantage. It's great to have a seat on the table and, play a role in the next frontier of an organization. But I guess it's that specific purpose. And if it is becoming a profit center, adding revenues or creating IP, so be it. I guess another important aspect from a competitive advantage perspective is this whole notion of GCCs enabling strategic capacity in support of organizational strategic priorities. I mean, what GCCs are doing today to organizations is providing that capacity they need. You know, and in a world where technology is changing so rapidly, there's nothing more important than the capacity that an organization needs so that they stay the course on their strategic priorities. So aligning the GCCs to the strategic priorities and morphing into a capacity which at some point we all know is going to be amplified by everything AI is possibly going to be the way to go. Another point is going to be around this whole notion of GCC archetypes. You know, there are GCC in many ways is a very loosely used term. It means different things to different organizations, different people. All of us will have a different notion of what a GCC means. But I guess what the maturity over 2.5 decades of GCCs in the making has led to is several archetypes, right? You have HQ2, you can have a GBS, you can have a product development center, you can have a combination of many of these archetypes. And I guess archetypes will in some ways connect the dots with this whole notion of what is your purpose, how simplistic you can be you be the 19th floor representation? So all of that is going to be, extremely important. And finally, I want to, build on this whole notion of talent. Already been spoken a lot around talent, and I want to bring out the difference between GCC talent and all other kinds of talent. I mean, when you're joining a GCC, you're joining an enterprise. And there are many other dimensions that get added to it. You manage stakeholders, you need to communicate effectively, you need to influence without authority, you got to have maybe impeccable academic credentials, you need to have superior job-related skills because the work that you are doing is possibly more complex or sophisticated. So there is a talent cloud that is rapidly emerging that is a standout from a GCC perspective. And I guess what is going to come in the way for all of us as a country is going to be, are we going to have adequate GCC-ready talent? Do we have people, who could do the job, whether they're sitting here in Bangalore, Hyderabad, or they could be, in a company's headquarters in Stuttgart or in New York City, right? So the expectations are very different, and also talent that can move around because, if you need to have GCC careers, you need to move around the organization. You cannot, take a vertical career path. You need to go sideways. You've got to go from technology to become a store manager somewhere and work in a warehouse and run an international office. So you need to have all those skills. Otherwise, GCCs will run out of career paths, and, the glass door, is going to sort of hit us in some ways. So I guess to sustain our competitive advantage, and when we talk about upskilling, there's a lot of focus on AI, there's a lot of focus on, digital and cloud and everything else, that represents the new exponential technologies that we are talking about. But I guess it's leadership, it's about, adopting culture of an organization that's going to play an important role. If anybody has to succeed today, if you don't have some of those skills, I mean, it's literally a no-go to be, coming out of the GCC cycles. So I just had some, random points. Just wanted to make sure I come out with a slightly, different narrative. But we are at an inflection point. I guess the GCC journey is just beginning, right? This is the end of the beginning. There's a lot of growth ahead. There's a lot of under penetration in Forbes 2000 and Fortune 500. There's a huge opportunity that's going to come from, the mid-market segment, the next million companies, anybody, from $1 million to $1 billion in revenues. That's an endless opportunity. And I guess a 10x opportunity from where we are as IT, ITES, and GCC industry is going to be when we start going beyond IT and IT-enabled services, when you start doing product design, some of the work that Manu and team are doing here. We'll see a lot more of that, right? When we start hiring chemical engineers, when we start hiring mechanical engineers, when we start hiring, other streams, and that is the true GCC opportunity. So a lot of projections that we see today, if we pursue the more holistic growth and it becomes just a talent story, the best, is yet to come. Thank you so much.